There are few things more universal than the desire to connect with other people, and few things more frustrating than feeling awkward when trying to do it. Many people walk into social situations carrying the same quiet questions. What should I say first? How do I avoid sounding stiff or dull? How do I make a good impression without seeming as though I am trying too hard? And why do some people appear instantly likable while others, even intelligent and caring ones, struggle to feel at ease? In How to Talk to Anyone, Leil Lowndes offers an answer that is both practical and reassuring. Social success, she argues, is not reserved for a lucky few who were born with effortless charm. It is built from specific habits, signals, and patterns of attention that can be learned. This is one reason the book has remained so appealing. It speaks to a common insecurity, but it does so in a useful way. It does not simply tell people to be more confident, more outgoing, or more charismatic. Instead, it breaks communication down into recognizable, manageable actions. In this audio summary, we will explore the deeper ideas beneath the book's advice. We will look at why first impressions carry so much weight, how body language shapes social reality before words even begin, why people are drawn to those who make them feel important, and how better conversation often comes not from having more to say, but from paying better attention. We will also consider what the book suggests about confidence, listening, warmth, and social intelligence. And along the way, we will see that this is not only a book about talking. It is a book about creating an emotional experience in which other people feel comfortable, recognized, and glad to be with you. At the heart of How to Talk to Anyone is a deeply encouraging premise. Human connection is not as mysterious as it often seems. The people who appear polished and socially fluent are often using behaviors that can be observed and practiced. They know how to enter a room. They know how to greet someone without shrinking or rushing. They know how to make eye contact in a way that feels steady rather than intense. They know how to ask questions that invite people to open up. They know how to listen in a way that makes others feel that what they are saying matters. Lowndes presents communication as a system of small adjustments with large consequences. A smile held 1 second longer. A pause instead of nervous filler. A remembered name. A thoughtful follow-up. A posture that suggests comfort instead of defensiveness. These are minor on the surface, but socially they are not minor at all. They shape perception. They influence mood. They signal whether someone is safe to relax around, worth remembering, or easy to trust. The deeper promise of the book is that social ease is more behavioral than mystical. Many people think they have a personality problem when, in reality, they have a signaling problem. They may be warm internally but appear distracted. They may be interested in others but fail to show it in ways that land. They may be intelligent and kind, yet move through conversation too quickly, too cautiously, or too self-consciously to let those qualities be felt. The book's practical spirit lies in closing that gap. It tries to help readers align their outward behavior with the kind of person they genuinely want to be in conversation: engaged, relaxed, attentive, and memorable. One of the strongest messages in the book is that the first moments of contact matter enormously. Before people evaluate our ideas, humor, or intelligence, they register our presence. They take in our expression, pace, eye contact, posture, and emotional energy. And from those cues, often within seconds, they begin forming conclusions. Are we comfortable in our own skin? Are we interested in them? Are we tense, guarded, friendly, rushed, eager, insecure, calm, or self-assured? Lowndes encourages readers to become much more intentional about these silent openings. She suggests that social warmth is not only spoken, it is shown. A real smile, natural eye contact, and an unhurried greeting can create more connection than a perfectly phrased opener delivered with nervous energy. This is an important distinction because many people overestimate the importance of verbal cleverness and underestimate the impact of emotional tone. In actual interaction, tone often arrives first. The body sets the stage for the words. A person who greets you with quiet steadiness and genuine attention may say something simple, but it lands well. Another person may have a polished line, yet still feel awkward because their presence communicates strain. What the book teaches here is the value of congruence. If you want to seem warm, let your face and timing reflect warmth. If you want to seem confident, let your movements show calm rather than hurry. The first impression is not about theatrical performance. It is about creating alignment between what you hope others feel in your presence and what your behavior is actually projecting. When people sense ease from us, they often become more at ease themselves. That is the beginning of almost every good conversation. Lowndes treats body language almost like an invisible script running beneath every spoken exchange. Long before a conversation becomes meaningful, the body is already making statements. It can say, "I am open." It can say, "I am uncertain." It can say, "I respect you enough to focus on you." Or it can say, without intending to, that the moment is not fully welcome. This is why the book pays so much attention to facial expression, eye contact, posture, gestures, and movement. These details matter because people respond not only to literal language, but to the emotional messages that accompany it. A person can say, "I am glad to meet you," while glancing away, fidgeting, or looking tense. The words are positive, but the felt experience is mixed. That mismatch creates friction. Lowndes encourages readers to reduce that friction by letting the body support the message. When attention is real, let it be visible. When interest is present, let it show in how you orient toward the other person. When confidence is desired, let your pace slow just enough to suggest that you do not need to scramble for social survival. The beauty of this advice is that it is not about becoming dramatic. In fact, much of the book points in the opposite direction. Composure is often more attractive than animation. Restraint can carry more authority than excessive energy. A relaxed smile and steady eye contact can feel more engaging than constant chatter. The book helps readers see that social success often depends on how the entire presence is experienced. Speech is only one part of that presence. The body is also speaking, and people are always listening to it. A recurring idea throughout How to Talk to Anyone is that people respond strongly to those who make them feel valued. This may be the book's most important principle. Conversation is not merely the exchange of information. It is also the exchange of emotional signals. People are constantly, often unconsciously, asking questions such as these. Do I matter here? Am I being listened to? Does this person see me as interesting, annoying, useful, forgettable, impressive, or ordinary? The communicators who leave a strong impression tend to answer those questions in a generous direction. They make others feel noticed. They remember a name. They refer back to something previously mentioned. They ask questions that are not generic. They respond with enough attention that the other person senses real presence rather than polite waiting. Lowndes understands that likability is deeply connected to this experience of recognition. Most people enjoy being around those who make them feel a little more articulate, a little more visible, a little more at ease. This does not require flattery or manipulation. In its best form, it comes from genuine curiosity. It comes from listening with enough care to notice what the other person cares about. It comes from letting someone finish their point rather than competing for the spotlight. It comes from responding in a way that says, "I heard you and I understand that this matters to you." That is one reason the book's advice still resonates. Beneath the tactics is a durable truth about human nature. People are drawn not only to brilliance or wit, but to emotional generosity. We feel attached to those who make us feel less invisible. Lowndes pays close attention to the use of names, and the emphasis is not accidental. A name is one of the simplest and strongest signals of personal acknowledgement. When someone remembers it, uses it naturally, and connects it to a real memory of who we are, we feel distinct rather than generic. We feel that we registered. The lesson, though, goes beyond names themselves. The deeper principle is personal specificity. Strong communicators do not treat people as a blur. They notice details. They remember professions, interests, stories, preferences, ambitions, or concerns. And when those details return in later conversation, the result is often powerful. The other person realizes this was not a disposable exchange. I was actually heard. That sense of recognition builds trust quickly because it implies care and attentiveness. Many people assume charisma comes from having something dazzling to say. Often it comes from remembering what others have said. A person who can refer back to a previous topic, ask about an ongoing challenge, or remember a small personal detail may appear unusually warm and socially skilled. But what they are really doing is demonstrating respect. Lowndes' advice here is especially practical because it shifts the center of conversation away from self-performance and toward memory, observation, and follow-through. You do not have to be the most entertaining person in the room to be memorable. You often only need to make someone feel that they were genuinely seen. For many people, the hardest part of social interaction is the beginning. Once a conversation gets moving, it becomes easier. But the opening can feel loaded with pressure. Lowndes addresses this by showing that good conversation starters do not need to be dazzling. In fact, trying too hard can create tension. The better goal is natural momentum. A useful opening often comes from shared context, warm observation, or a question that invites the other person into an easy response. The deeper wisdom here is that conversation should feel opened, not launched. When people treat every interaction like a performance test, they become stiff. When they treat it as a gradual process of attention and discovery, they become more fluid. Lowndes encourages readers to let openings be simple while making their presence strong. That means less obsession with finding the perfect line and more focus on tone, receptivity, and the willingness to build from what is already available in the moment. A conversation can begin with environment, timing, mutual experience, or sincere curiosity. What matters is that it gives the other person room to step in comfortably. The book helps readers understand that awkwardness is often amplified by self-monitoring. The more we fixate on how we are coming across, the less available we are to the actual exchange. But when attention turns outward, conversation starts to feel less like a performance and more like a shared space. One of the quiet strengths of the book is its respect for good questions. A strong question does more than keep conversation alive. It shapes the quality of connection. Flat questions invite flat answers. Generic questions produce routine replies. But thoughtful questions, especially those that touch experience, perspective, or interest, allow people to become more fully present in the conversation. Lowndes' broader message is that social skill often lies not in dominating the exchange, but in drawing something real out of it. Better questions communicate interest, and that interest changes the emotional texture of the interaction. When someone senses that you are not simply filling silence, they become more willing to speak honestly and expansively. This is particularly important because many conversations fail not from conflict, but from superficiality. They remain trapped in polite, low-risk territory. The right question can shift things gently into more meaningful ground. It can invite story, preference, motivation, reflection, or humor. It can also help reveal what matters to the other person, and once that becomes visible, the conversation becomes much easier to sustain. Good questions do not interrogate. They open. They say, in effect, there is room here for more of you. That is why they are so socially powerful. They help people feel interesting, and most people respond warmly to anyone who helps them feel that way. If there is one skill that quietly underlies much of Lowndes' advice, it is listening. Not passive listening, not merely nodding while waiting for a turn, but active, emotionally present listening. The book recognizes something many people forget. Conversation is not won by speaking the most. It is strengthened by receiving the other person well. Strong listeners track both content and feeling. They hear the words, but they also notice enthusiasm, hesitation, pride, frustration, curiosity, and uncertainty. They respond in ways that show they are not just processing facts, but engaging with meaning. This kind of listening is powerful because it meets one of the deepest interpersonal needs, the desire to feel understood. When someone listens with genuine attention, the other person usually relaxes. Their speech becomes more natural. Their trust increases. Their self-consciousness drops. In that sense, listening is not only respectful, it is socially generative. It creates better conversation because it improves the state of the speaker. Lowndes helps readers see that many socially gifted people are not necessarily the most verbally impressive. Often, they are the ones who make others feel most articulate, most comfortable, most welcome to continue. This shifts the idea of charisma in a healthier direction. Charisma is not only what you project, it is also what you evoke. If people feel more alive, more seen, and more settled while speaking with you, they are likely to enjoy your company. Listening, then, is not a supporting skill. It is one of the main engines of connection. Another important thread in how to talk to anyone involves the social signals of confidence and status. Lowndes is interested not only in friendliness, but in how people project value. Her view is that confidence is often communicated through restraint. People who appear grounded do not rush to fill every silence. They do not over-explain every point. They do not scramble for approval in every sentence. Instead, they let themselves occupy the interaction with steadiness. This has a strong effect because others tend to associate calmness with self-trust. The person who is comfortable pausing appears more secure than the person who talks compulsively out of anxiety. The person who moves deliberately appears more assured than the person whose body signals constant tension. The person who listens fully before responding often appears more substantial than the person who jumps in too quickly. The valuable lesson here is not to imitate superiority. It is to cultivate self-possession. Social authority, at its best, comes from being centered enough not to perform desperation. Lowndes seems to understand that many people undermine themselves not because they lack value, but because they telegraph uncertainty. They rush. They overtalk. They overdisclose. They seek reassurance too visibly. The book encourages a different stance. Slow down. Let silence breathe. Say less when less is stronger. Allow your attention to rest fully on the person in front of you. This composure does not only improve first impressions, it also changes your inner state. When you stop acting as though every interaction is a test you might fail, you begin to participate with greater ease. And ease is often one of the clearest forms of confidence. One of the reasons the book works across both personal and professional settings is that it does not treat warmth and competence as opposites. Lowndes suggests that the strongest communicators often project both. They are approachable, but not flimsy. They are kind, but not socially lost. They're engaging, yet composed. This combination matters because people respond differently depending on what they sense from us. Warmth without competence may create affection without respect. Competence without warmth may create admiration without closeness. When the two are combined, the result is far more powerful. In personal relationships, it creates trust and attraction. In professional life, it creates credibility and rapport. The book's practical techniques support this balance. A warm greeting says, "You are welcome here." A composed tone says, "I am comfortable with myself." Attentive listening says, "You matter." Clear speech says, "I know how to organize my thoughts." Remembering details says, "I pay attention." Not overselling yourself says, "I do not need to force importance." Taken together, these signals create a fuller social presence. This is one reason the book can be useful even for people who are already outwardly friendly. It asks for something more refined than simple niceness. It asks for presence with intention. It asks readers to become not only pleasant, but effective. Small talk often gets dismissed as shallow, but Lowndes implicitly treats it as an entry point rather than a final destination. Most meaningful conversation does not begin at depth. It begins with something light enough to feel safe. The real skill lies in what happens next. Can the exchange remain mechanical, or can it become more human? The book offers many ways to make that shift. Listen for what carries energy. Notice what the other person lingers on. Follow the thread that seems connected to something real. Respond in a way that gently rewards substance rather than only politeness. This is where conversational sensitivity becomes valuable. The goal is not to force intimacy or seriousness, but to recognize opportunities for more genuine engagement. A casual remark about work might open into ambition, frustration, or purpose. A passing comment about travel might open into memory, identity, or wonder. A light exchange about a hobby might reveal discipline, passion, or joy. Strong communicators know how to notice those openings. They also know not to push too hard. They let the conversation deepen by invitation rather than pressure. This makes the interaction feel natural. It also helps explain why some people seem easy to talk to. They are not always saying extraordinary things. Often, they are simply better at helping ordinary moments become slightly more real. A subtle but important lesson in how to talk to anyone is that communication is contextual. The same tone does not fit every situation. The same pace does not fit every person. The same level of humor, directness, or personal disclosure will not feel right in every room. Lowndes encourages social adaptability, the ability to sense what kind of presence the moment calls for. Some conversations need enthusiasm. Others need gentleness. Some benefit from quick wit. Others benefit from patience and seriousness. This flexibility is a hallmark of social intelligence because it shows that communication is not only self-expression. It is responsiveness. The best communicators are not simply those with a strong style. They are those who can tune that style without becoming fake. They remain themselves, but they become more skillful about how that self is delivered. This requires observation. It requires noticing the other person's pace, mood, openness, and emotional tone. It also requires enough self-awareness to avoid making the interaction entirely about one's own comfort. Social ease is often mutual. When we adapt well, we help the other person participate more naturally. That, in turn, improves the interaction for both sides. The book does not always phrase it in abstract terms, but this is one of its deeper ideas. Good communication is less about one ideal performance and more about attunement. Although the book is highly practical, it quietly rests on a larger view of human nature. Again and again, its techniques work because they respond to common emotional needs. People want to feel noticed. They want to feel respected. They want to feel that their words are landing somewhere real. They want to feel safe enough to relax. They want to feel interesting without having to fight for space. Lowndes' advice is effective because it aligns with these underlying desires. That is why the techniques, at their best, feel less like tricks and more like structured forms of consideration. Even many of the book's apparently tactical suggestions point back to the same principle: make people feel comfortable and significant. This is worth emphasizing because some readers may encounter the book as a collection of methods. But its deeper value is clearer when seen through this emotional lens. The methods matter because relationships are shaped by signals of value and attention. When people feel dismissed, neglected, or handled, connection weakens. When they feel welcomed, heard, and appreciated, connection grows. That may sound simple, but it is not simplistic. In real life, many interactions fail precisely because people are too distracted, self-conscious, rushed, or performative to provide that experience. The book's usefulness lies in making those invisible failures more visible and giving readers ways to correct them. The strength of How to Talk to Anyone is that its lessons apply almost everywhere. In professional life, better communication can influence interviews, networking, leadership, sales, teamwork, and negotiation. A person who makes others feel at ease and respected tends to build trust faster. A person who listens well tends to learn more. A person who projects calm confidence is often taken more seriously. In personal life, the same principles shape friendship, attraction, family connection, and everyday social comfort. If you remember details, ask thoughtful questions, and make people feel heard, relationships deepen more naturally. If you slow down and project steadiness, you often reduce unnecessary tension. If you become more attentive to nonverbal behavior, you start noticing why some interactions flow and others stall. One of the most empowering aspects of the book is that these changes do not require a new identity. They require more awareness. You do not have to become louder if you are quiet. You do not have to become highly performative if that is not your style. You simply need to become more intentional about what your presence communicates. That makes the book useful not only for extroverts hoping to become sharper, but also for reserved people who want to feel more capable without betraying their temperament. The central promise remains the same. Social effectiveness can be built through practice. As we step back from the many techniques and examples, the deepest lesson of how to talk to anyone may be this: good conversation is less about performance than presence. Many people enter social situations with a hidden agenda of self-protection. They want to avoid embarrassment, avoid silence, avoid seeming dull, avoid rejection. That anxiety turns attention inward. It creates monitoring, stiffness, and pressure. The book, in its most useful moments, offers a way out of that trap. Focus less on impressing and more on attending. Less on filling space and more on reading it. Less on proving your worth and more on helping the interaction feel comfortable, respectful, and alive. When attention moves outward in this way, conversation often improves naturally. You listen better. You notice more. Your questions become more relevant. Your responses become less forced. Your body relaxes. The other person senses that relaxation and often responds with some of their own. This creates a better loop. Presence generates ease, ease generates connection, and connection makes conversation feel less like labor. That does not mean social skill becomes effortless overnight. It remains a practice. But it does mean that one of the quickest ways to improve is to stop treating conversation primarily as self-display. The most engaging people are often not those who dominate every exchange. They are those whose attention feels sincere, whose confidence feels calm, and whose company makes others feel slightly more comfortable being themselves. How to talk to anyone endures because it gives shape to something many people have felt but could not quite articulate. Human interaction is full of small moments that matter. A look, a pause, a remembered detail, a question asked with genuine interest. A silence handled with ease. A greeting that feels warm instead of mechanical. These moments may seem minor, yet they accumulate into a social identity. They influence whether others experience us as tense or relaxed, self-absorbed or attentive, forgettable or distinct. Leil Lowndes offers a practical vocabulary for these moments. Some of the advice is tactical, some stylistic, and some quietly psychological, but much of it points toward a lasting truth. People are drawn to warmth, attention, and self-possession. They like being around those who make them feel seen without pressure, welcomed without flattery, and heard without competition. The book's most valuable message is therefore not simply how to sound better. It is how to become more skillful at the emotional side of conversation. Learn to notice. Learn to slow down. Learn to communicate interest before cleverness. Learn to let confidence look like composure rather than force. And above all, learn that every interaction offers a chance to make another person feel slightly more recognized. That is the deeper art beneath talking to anyone. It is the art of helping people feel at ease in your presence. And when that becomes your habit, conversation stops feeling like a test and starts feeling like connection.